Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us on our YouTube live session today. We're talking about startup visa, the most exciting news, good or bad, depending on which side of the fence you're on, and we're going to be covering that today. Okay, we're going to be jumping in and talking about the startup visa, the changes, the implications, the rumors. And yeah, you're like, Reza, how come you didn't comb your hair today? Well, we've been talking and getting all the latest rumors, the latest prices. Who has time to sleep now with all these startup visa changes? Folks, if you don't know who I am, quick introduction, and this is not scripted. I'm a licensed immigration practitioner with Ingwe Immigration. We help businesses, family, individuals, and professionals move across borders, no matter which country it is. Of course, the reason we're doing these live streams is to engage with our audience, answering questions, comments, and of course, sharing our hands-on knowledge. We help agencies, consultants, lawyers, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, to outsource their back office operations. And we are global solution mobility providers, way beyond just startup and Canadian immigration. Today, we're talking about startup visa, and I know that's why you tuned in today, and you're like, what's happening? Why is there the Minister of Immigration on the thumbnail of your YouTube with like the Terminator machine gun? Well, he just literally wiped everyone off the face of the map in immigration and the startup visa just by a click of a button. Folks, here it is. Here are the facts. Here's what you need to know. There's 83 designated organizations listed on the Canadian government startup visa website that are allowed to issue letters of support, or to basically that means to endorse startups to move to Canada and become eligible for the Canadian Permanent Residency Program. And this has been a very popular program not since its inception, but let's say 2018-19, it really got some traction, and it has become the most popular program 2018-19 onwards. It's about 10 years that this program has been active, and now significant changes with the announcement on April 29th, just a few days ago, by the Minister of Immigration in Canada, that each designated organization is limited to 10 startup groups per year to endorse them. This means that a total of 830 startup groups can be endorsed by year end this year or per year under the SUV program, which equates to a total of 4,150 applicants at a maximum if you calculate 5 applicants or co-founders per startup group. So this number is not bad. And why is everyone freaking out or panicking? Well, the reason is that many designated organizations who were hyperactive in the previous years in issuing letters of support will not be able to do so in the future because they're capped, right? Many of the organizations were also not active at all. So you see them on the website, but they weren't really issuing letters of support. It was not their core activity. Meaning, I know some of these organizations that haven't even issued a letter of support in the last God knows how many years. So from this, you can understand that the 10 startup groups per designated organization actually equates to significantly less startups being endorsed each year than the market had projected and planned for 2024, 2025, and 2026, assuming that this policy stays in place, the government is in place, and all that sort of stuff. Interestingly enough, keep in mind that the IRCC Canadian Immigration Department still wants to process 17,000 new PR applications, both for SUV program and self-employed program, by the end of 2026, as per their 3-year targets, which it still can because of the massive backlog, especially with the self-employed program, which is for world-class occupations, professionals in athletics, sports, culture, and arts. And the key with that target of 17,000, it's combined between startup visa and self-employed. There's no differentiation of which one gets a bigger share, but there's enough backlog with the new cap with SUV and the self-employed to meet that target. So the government is still on track. The SUV program will never be the same. So the startup visa program, and now the ministerial instructions have been posted, okay, just in the last 1 or 2 days. Well, since April 30th, stating that the IRCC officers are to process priority designated organizations under the SUVPR application before any other applications are processed. In the instructions, it also states about the timing. The year for this cap begins January 1st till end of December, except 2024, in which case it still ends by the end of December this year. So the designated organizations only have May to December for this cap, which is good and bad because most designated organizations were planning to endorse more than 50 startups this year. So they won't have a problem in issuing 10 letters of 10 startup endorsing 10 startup groups in less than 12 months officially. That's not their pain point at this stage. More clarifications and instructions, including the SUVPR application, such as, quote unquote, in order for any application associated with a commitment certificate to enter into processing, all applications associated with that commitment certificate must have been received. Thank God for that clarification. There has been so much talk and cases where the main co-founders applied and then they're already in Canada with a work permit, and then we have like co-founders applying later for PR. I mean, it was a crazy, like the wild west. So I'm glad they've actually clarified that on the new ministerial instructions that, hey, everyone should be applying for our PR before any processing happens for the co-founders of a group. I'm going to quote now from the IRCC ministerial instructions in regards to the prioritization that they've stated for the SUV. And this is an exact quote. I'll paraphrase in a few areas. Applications for permanent residency visas under the start of business class, including those received by the department prior to coming into force of these new instructions, shall be prioritized for processing if they are supported by commitment that meets the following conditions. It's commitment by a venture capital minimum $200,000 commitment, a commitment made by an angel investor $75,000, a commitment made by authorized business incubator, where the authorized business incubator is either a member of the Canada Tech Network, we'll cover that, or has a committed minimum investment or capital of $75,000 to the applicant or applicants of a startup proposal. Applicants that are not supported by commitment that meets one of these following conditions will be processed following those that are prioritized on a first come first basis as an annual admissions level space allows. So basically, and that's the end of that quote. So basically, folks, that means that incubators can actually commit capital and be prioritized if they're not part of the Canada Tech Network, if they're not a venture capital or angel investor. And everyone else, if you're not a priority, will be processed after everyone else, all the priority cases, as long as it meets the minimum, the cap that all the designated organizations have per year, which is 10 startups per year. On the IRCC Canadian Immigration website as well, a couple of days after this announcement, priority processing labels have been included to show that all venture capitals are now priorities processing, angel investors, and incubators in the Canada Tech Network, which include Genesis, Invest Nova Scotia, Innovation Factor in Hamilton, Ontario, Innovation Niagara in Ontario, Invest Ottawa, North Forge Technology Exchange, which is in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Platform Calgary, DMZ in Toronto, Ontario, Venture Lab Innovation Center, Viatech in Victoria, BC, and Waterloo Accelerator Center in Ontario. Of course, beside these, if there's been committed capital again by a non-prioritized incubator, these applications can also be prioritized according to the SUV. So these new instructions are released April 30th and expire on December 31st, 2026. So for their 3-year target for SUV, self-employed, and their immigration targets, these instructions apply unless, let's say, a new minister comes, a new government comes and throws everything into disarray and changes it, which we don't expect to happen, at least for the next 2 years. So what are the implications of these changes that we've stated before? What do they mean for new applicants under the SUV, agencies, consultants involved in the SUV program? Well, significantly higher prices to join a cohort or be admitted to a program under the SUV for incubators, venture capital, and angel investors. equivalent, it also means more competition for programs such as DMZ, which don't take a fee, but in exchange for equity to take on the best startups. So even more competition, because many people will be pushed out and cannot afford the exorbitant high prices that will be charged by designated organizations, because it's basic economics. And I've said this in my previous video. The demand is stable, and the number of letters of support has just been capped and limited. So that just puts pressure on prices going up. All startup groups will be five co-founders each going forward. No more 2, 3, or 4 to maximize profit for the industry, and also, let's say, minimize costs for the co-founders. But technically, there's not going to be much about minimizing. It's all about maximization going forward. There will be eye gouging prices being charged due to the limited supply of letters of support, and it won't be free for all. And it's not going to be free for all anymore. I've had people messaging me on LinkedIn and even heard in the marketplace previously in the last couple of years offering cheap letters of support and business consulting for the SUV program. All these people will be wiped off the SUV map. This is a fact. It's survival of the fittest now. Anyone who's in the industry. Here's the latest rumors and latest gossip about the SUV marketplace. Prices being charged are 3 to 5 times higher by designated organizations. They haven't announced the prices, but this is the back end that I've tapped into, and I've been talking to a lot of designated organizations and stakeholders in the industry, and we're talking about 3 to 5 times higher than it was literally before April 29th. There was one case where designated organization in Ontario, not even a prioritized one, has jacked up their prices by tenfold, which is ridiculous. Sometimes some people have been calling all the designated organizations. So there's been agencies and consultants, or whatever you call them, calling designated organizations across Canada and offering to pre-purchase all their letters of support for the next 3 years. Whoa. What is going on, folks? This sounds like the wild, wild west. They think they're like trading pork bellies on the commodities exchange in Chicago or New York or something. Some applicants and startups already completed the designated organization's cohort have been asked to wait even a year or more for the letter of support unless they have investors backing them. So we've heard of incubators where they've dismissed a whole cohort that they were about to start, like a program. And we've heard of ones where applicants have completed the cohort and they're not being issued a letter of support now because the designated organization doesn't want to use up their credit for the year. And they've told them that, okay, you wait for a year or two, or you bring in investors to back you with, more capital. So these are some of the gossip and rumors roaming around. Fact is, SUV will not be the same anymore. Prices have gone up. People will be pushed out of the market, whether it's consultants, agencies, or applicants who cannot afford these crazy prices. Priority will be given to startups which have traction, which have revenues and customers, not just an MVP, a business plan, and a website. And those are not a lot that want to come through this program to Canada. So you got to keep that in mind. So there's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of things going on, and this was a quick session today on a Saturday, and we're never on Saturdays, you know that, and I know that, to go over all these changes that have been. And if you already have a letter of support issued before this date, you're not affected. You can apply for your PR and your work permit. No problem. If you're part of a cohort, well, that your designated organization should have been supporting you and issuing the letter of support that meets that April 30th deadline. If they haven't, well, you can't do much about it at this point. If you're already under processing with the PR and work permits, you're not affected. If anything, you could be prioritized if you're part of the Canada Tech Network or you were endorsed by an angel investor or VC. So anyone already under process or already had a valid letter of support, you are not affected. Don't worry, don't freak out. But anyone else who's planning to or is under the process of getting a letter of support, you may be affected. Or if you haven't applied yet, well, price is just went skyrocket. I feel like we're dealing with Bitcoin here. That's how crazy it is right now in the startup visa market, in the Canadian SUV program marketplace. We're going to go to a few questions and comments on our YouTube channel here. And I feel like there's a lot of new commenters and audience members because we're here on a Saturday. We're never here on a Saturday. Sahil Malek says, hi Reza, will Canadian citizenship days reduce in future? Does student days in Canada count towards your citizenship days? Yes, it does. You get a credit, and this is a non-SUV question, folks. Yes, Sahil, you get a credit of half a day for every day you spend inside Canada as a temporary resident for a maximum of 1 year credit. So if you spend 2 years full-time as a student, you could get 1 year credit discount off your citizenship eligibility, which is 3 years. So 3 years minus 1, it means 2 years. 2 years after you are PR, you could become eligible if you meet all the other criteria for citizenship in Canada. Samvir Kumar says, medical was done in December 2023. No application still showing background check. And how long will it take SUV Apple? Well, it depends when you applied, Somvir. It's not when the medical check and all that is done. When did you apply? Did you apply in the last 2 years? Did you apply? It's usually right now, if you apply 2022 onwards, we expect usually within 24 months your PR to be processed. If you apply just, June 2023, well, it may take end of 2024 or early 2025. It really depends on when you apply. Karanbir Shah. Hi Reza, got a big breaking for you to dissect. Okay, I got a big breaking for you to dissect. Okay, sure, why not? Why not? The more the merrier. And Samvir says June 2022. So yeah, so basically, Samvir, you can expect your PR to be processed. Well, if the new changes weren't implemented, I would have told you by this summer, so in the next 4 months. But depending on which designated organization that endorses you, if it's a venture capital angel investor or part of the Canada Tech Network, and if it's not, then it could take till the end of this year, Samvir, or maybe early 2025, because the issue is with these new changes, they're pushing all the other applications aside and processing the prioritized one. But this year you'll have your PR, whether it's June, September, October, or May, that nobody knows, of course. I can't predict that. I don't have the crystal ball. Zishan Samreen, our SUV PR is under process and already submitted medical, biometrics, and ADR in March 24th, so this year. Could you please clarify this limitation of 10 stars PRs for each DO is applicable to our group? No, Zishan. As I mentioned in this live stream, applicants who are already under process, who already submitted their PR, or already have a letter of support, are not affected by these new ministerial instructions. The only effect that it has is prioritization. If you were endorsed by a venture capital angel investor or a Canada Tech Network incubator or a business incubator that has committed capital, then you will go to the top of the pile, no matter when you applied. But if you weren't, then you're kind of lingering in that pile, but you're still getting processed. And right now we're seeing, before these ministerial instructions were issued, we're seeing 18 to 24 months for PR processing. But now, obviously, there will be some differentiation in applications. So we've got Anaruda De Silva. Hi, Reza. Hello, Anaruda. Nice to see you. Interesting. What is the time frame from pre-arrival letter to COPR? Also, any possible decline the visa? The possibility could, but it's very unlikely. 99% get the COPR after the pre-arrival. Previously, it would have taken months. Now we're seeing it within 4 weeks or less after the pre-arrival. Anuradha. Meme Sheen. Hi, Reza. Thanks for the session. Question. Does the spousal open work permit become invalid if the original spouse changed from closed to open work permit? Change from closed to open work permit. The spousal open work permit, the spousal open work permit in question is not collected. Interesting question. That's a mind twister. Does the spousal open work permit become invalid if original spouse changed from closed to open? Um, the validity is always according to the main applicant, right? So technically, it's still possible. It's still okay. But what I usually do is that the status hasn't changed. They're still a full-time worker. So technically, meme, it's okay to continue. But 4, 5, 6 months before it expires, you should apply for renewal in case the open work permit is valid longer than the original closed work permit, because the spouse is obviously dependent on the validity of the main applicant. But in technically, it's okay, technically. But again, we can always ping IRCC and ask, because your status remains the same. The status is a full-time worker. Now it's just a closed work permit. So technically, it's okay. Okay. Vimuliza, but it's a good question. I haven't come across that case before. Vimuliza Tina. Usually what we do generally though is we reapply for the spouse too. So when they change, we reapply with the spouse. So that's what we do, meme. So that's why we don't really deal with such a question before, is that if the main applicant is changing, we include the spouse to reapply for the spousal open work permit based on the new condition. So that's how we usually do it. So that's why I've never had a case where I had to deal with the question you've actually asked me. Vimuliza Tina, hello Reza. I got a reply last week from IRCC asking me to give them bank statements confirmation letter from my bank. Now, for how long I will hear from them again? Well, it depends on the program, Vimuliza. It could be a month or 3 months. It depends on the typical PR processing times, but usually when they're asking for questions and documentation, it means they're making a decision quite quickly. However, I don't know what kind of application you're talking about, if it's a visitor visa, a PR, a sponsorship. So it's difficult to say. Meme shares with W1 visa is still valid. Yeah, got that. Samvir Kumar, incubator pie cap. Samvir, yeah. So if you're under process now, they'll probably finish your processing this year before the whole prioritization will affect, because an officer will not actually stop processing you if they already started processing you because of the new ministerial instructions. But what will happen is they'll finish what they've started processing, and then they'll focus on the priority designate organization. So if they've already started processing you, and that is based on them sending you the actual final the permanent file number for your PR application survey. So if you have that, or if you receive request letters from the IRCC, it means you're under process. So it means you're okay. You're not going to be pushed back. Okay, but PICAP is not a priority designated organization anymore. But if you already have a PR file number, permanent one, or they've asked you for information by the IRCC visa officer, then you're good to go. Okay. Mir Anvar says, if someone has already applied for the PR based on an LOS from an incubator, should the same startup should reach out to the tech innovation organization for some support and will it affect the PR case? No, at this point, if you've already been processed, you applied, you're just in the pipeline. Not much you can do after that. Okay, Mir, like that's it. Karanbir Shah, one quick on total applications under process supported to be supposed to be 16,000. We expect 850 applicants per year, and for the next 2 years, quota 17,000. So all will get the PR. So the way it works is you're going to calculate based on 5 applicants, 5 co-founders per startup. So the incubators, they will maximize. They're going to put 5 people in each startup group, and then those 850 levels of support. But they're not those 850 startup groups will be like packs of 5 people. But a lot of these designated are not even active with letters of support. So that number will be skewed. The 17,000 is combined with self-employed Karambir. So it's not just SUV. There's over a huge backlog of self-employed PR applications that they want to process. And there's a backlog of SUV. So with the backlog and the new cap and the fact that most organizations will have 5 co-founders per startup group, no matter what, to maximize their revenues, yes, the government will meet that target. But no, not everyone will get their PR. Hui No, hi Reza. I'm an SUV applicant who applied for PR in May 2023. Now we're having a temporary file number only. With these changes in SUV policy, any good or bad effect on our application? Hugh, so you're not going to be affected immediately, like you're under process, so that's good. However, it depends on your designation here. So if you were endorsed by a non-prioritized designated organization or venture capital or angel investor who, you were not endorsed by them, then your application may be slower to be processed, right? It could take 2 years, 2.5 years, who knows? But if you were endorsed, your letter of support was from a incubator that is prioritized, which I went through in this live stream just before you joined, or a venture capital or angel investor, a designated one, then you will see faster processes. So either way, you will be processed for your PR and have a decision, but it won't affect you immediately. But it depends on the designated organization that endorsed you, whether you'll be processed faster or slower. Sahil Malik, we got our medical request in April 2024 for SUV program. Our PR timeline from now. Well, it depends when you applied, but usually, like as I said, the medical request typically means that you are being processed or will be processed, unless these new ministerial instructions for SUV push you back further. If an officer is actually open your file and looking at it, you will be processed. Layli Reza, hello sir, thank you for everything. No problem. Samvir Kumar, yes, I do have a UCI number. Okay, then no, not a UCI number, Samvir. Like the PR file number that starts with E. If you have that, then a human being is actually processing your application. I've said this like a million times in our YouTube live. So if you have that, then you're good to go this year with your PR. If you don't, you could be pushed back. Rayam Malik, hello sir, how are you? Thank you. Hui New, thanks for your answers. No problem, Hugh. Muatazama, which is the best province for studying to get PNP easier? It's a tough one, Muataz. I would say Saskatchewan and Atlantic are my top two choices for that question. Somewhere, yes, I do have to start with E. Perfect. Somewhere, you are under process. There's a human being officer process your application. They will not close it and start somebody else's till they finish yours. So potentially in the next 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you'll have your PR decision. So very soon. So you're on track, Somewhere. You will not be affected by these new changes that have been announced for the start of visa application processing. So hopefully we've given some no problem, Samvia. Hopefully we've given some insight to everyone. I know it was a Saturday. We just kind of jumped in on our YouTube live because there was a lot of talk and I wanted to let everyone know what these changes mean and the rumors, what's happening. And one theory I have is that who's going to be in charge in IRCC to actually check how many letters of support or groups a designated organization has issued. I know it's not complicated. Anyone with a calculator or a spreadsheet can do that, but is there somebody in the SUV program in IRCC who's going to be in charge of that? I have my doubts right now. I think it's just a free for all, and they'll eventually figure out, okay, there has to be somebody who's going to check all these and check off them. Okay, this designated organization issued like endorsed 3 people from this April 30th onwards, or 3 groups or 5 groups, right? But they never had somebody like that. They never actually had somebody like that, but they actually have to put somebody responsible for that. That's my theory, that they still have to figure that out of how they're going to check. I know it's a mundane task, but there was nobody actually doing that before. They did have statistics of letters of support and groups and stuff, so they just have to put somebody in charge. And they will do that, hopefully. With the IRCC, they usually come and announce stuff, and then they figure out how they want to do it, because that's how we've always seen it with IRCCs. They make all these fancy announcements, and then they have no clue of how to implement it. But I'm pretty sure they'll do it this time. What is the timeline? So Anuradha says, what is the timeline from COPR to first landing? COPR to first landing. Well, usually you get when you have your COPR, you can land till your medical is valid. So if your medical was done last October, it's valid for till the next October. That's the timeline you're allowed to actually do a landing, until your medical is valid. So keep in mind about all these issues. But in terms of like them requesting your passport and then issuing back, depends on the embassy, and then usually the validity of your first landing is still the validity of your medical. So the last medical you did, you just add 12 months, and there you go. Hopefully that's answered your question, folks. If you have any questions, don't be shy. I know there's a lot of you back here in the shadows, not asking questions or commenting. That's fine. But today was a Saturday. It was a one-off. We're usually not online on Saturdays, but we're busy with all the startup visa changes and the thing. And we're talking to a lot of designated organizations. And the key is, remember, there are alternatives to startup visa. So if you're being pushed out, look at those. And there are, yes, startup visa with new pricing. A lot of people will not have allocations, will not have access, or will not be able to afford the new pricing of SUV. So keep that in mind. And then at the same time, keep in mind that there are alternative programs for SUV. And keep in mind there's alternatives to Canada as well, depending on how flexible you are in the countries you want to immigrate to. Got another couple points. Muataz Ahmed, what are the options for age 35 PMP or studying? Muataz, it depends. If you can get a study permit, it's not bad. If you have a higher budget, maybe you want to start a business, maybe you want to come through the entrepreneur program, maybe the SUV, which is now very expensive. So if you can get a study permit and you don't have big budgets, and maybe study permits are good. Anuradha the Silva, thank you. No problem, Anuradha. Folks, I know everyone is wondering what all these changes are, how they'll affect, but keep in mind, if you already submitted your PR application under SUV or work permit or have a valid letter of support, you are not significantly affected at all. If your PR is under process and you're receiving a permanent file number or IRCC request letter, you are not at all affected by these new changes. It's the significant changes for new applicants, people who have not applied or just applying to the admission to the incubator or venture capital angel investor. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough, or it's going to be competitive, or it's going to cost you very high amounts to get in. Okay. And this is what the ministry has done. Okay. Basically, by cutting supply of letters of support, they've pushed up the prices of SUV. And okay, maybe good or bad, depending on who you are, what you're doing, whether you're an incubator, designated organization, or an applicant, or a consultant. Hey, Winnie, how are you? It is wise to make a change to commitment of certificates for changing essential to non-essential with this new policy. All founders PR got submitted in April 2023. So the question Winnie's asking is it wise to make a change to commitment certificate, meaning the letter of support, for changing essential to non-essential with the new policy? All founders submitted their application last year in April. So Winnie, if you have received a permanent file number, like I told you before, I wouldn't not recommend it. Unless it's like very special circumstances which can justify, I don't recommend it. But if you have not yet received the PR file number, I would say you can. But keep in mind, if your designated organization is not temporary only, okay, you can issue so if it's significant enough that justifies it, yeah, I would do it now. Don't wait for the permanent file number. Don't wait for an officer to open the file and then change, because then that's high risk. They'll be flagged. The only thing you may be risking is that you might be stuck in the slower processing of non-prioritized designated organizations if the commitment certificate is issued. Plus, when you keep this in mind, designated organizations, this is a very good point, everyone. If you're watching Netflix or eating a donut, stop and listen to this. Designated organizations are not clear yet on whether reissuing renewed commitment certificates with some changes or renewals of previously endorsed groups will affect their new 10 startup group cap per year. So a lot of designated organizations don't know that. So some of them may be oblivious, Winnie, and do it, but some of them are hesitant because they're like, is this going to count towards that 10 per year that we're capped at? This is something that has not been clarified. And the IRCC has promised the designated organization for an info session in mid-May over the next week or two to clarify all these points. Okay, and hopefully we'll have clarity on that over the next 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks as well. So that's something to keep in mind, Winnie, is that if your design organization is willing to do that and you have a temporary file number and you have to do it to change your co-founders from essential non-essential, do it now, ASAP, if they're willing to do it. If you really have to, of course. Karambir Shah, thank you. And Winnie, let me know if reach out to me. Let's have a chat on designate organizations. These days you gotta collaborate and partner up, folks. There's a limited supply going around. Karanbir Shah says, thank you, no problem. Sahel Malek says, commitment certificate means that your organization is funding you. No, commitment certificate, Sahel, means it's the full commitment certificate, including the letter of support. So the letter of support is 2 pages of the entire commitment certificate that the designated organization issues towards IRCC when endorsing your startup. That the IRCC will see with all the details about your startup, the business concept, the founders, the due diligence, and everything. So when they mean commitment certificate, basically it's the whole package, which inside it includes the letter of support, which is only 2 pages of the entire commitment service. So I hope that's clarified. Winnie, no problem. I will surely, no problem. I know you're scrambling with all the changes and your startups. But yeah, startup it is, folks. Startup visa. There are alternatives. So people, if you're looking for PR to Canada, there are alternatives. And if you have the money for this new startup visa world in Canada, sure, it's possible. But again, prices are 3 to 5 times higher now for startups, or more competitive. So either you've got the best startup, you are a unicorn, you've got customers and revenue, you're good to go and you can be admitted. But reality check, 99% of the startup visa world doesn't have that. Usually you know it and I know it. It's very rare. Muatazama, what is the average amount of money to be invested for which program of money to be invested? Amortas, it depends. So entrepreneur programs start 100,000 plus for rural, 250 to 350,000 minimum for the big cities, and then net worth. And if you're doing other programs like Startup Visa, well, the prices now are going to be so high that it'll be similar pricing for SUV, but those won't be an actual investment. You're just paying to play. Folks, thanks for joining us. I know it was a quick in and out for YouTube live stream on a Saturday. But again, these are unprecedented changes. Nobody was expecting them. I mean, there was a lot of talk about it, but nobody thought they would pull the trigger. And that's why we have the Punisher picture on the thumbnail of our YouTube live of the minister just like machine gunning everyone, because that's basically what they did. All the designated organizations were just knocked out. Startup visa prices will go like 5 times. Visas 5x visa in America now with the latest change. Yes, Sahil, 3 to 5 times or more competitive. So either you've got a startup, like I said, that has revenues and customers and it's the best of the best, which a lot of us don't have, obviously, or you're paying 3 to 5 times higher. And as I said earlier in this live stream, there's incubators that are now not officially, but they're saying 10 times higher, which is ridiculous. Okay. But there's little cracks in the system. You can find those affordable designated organizations, but it is painful. But if you're just going for pay to play and you need a lot of support, you want to apply for your PR, expect if you were paying 20,000, expect to be paying over 100,000. If you were paying 100,000, expect to be paying 300,000, depending on the market you are. And that's a reality, folks. If you have no idea what I just said, then you're not in the market. Okay, this is the reality with Startup Visa. This is the reality of the various market segmentations and the pricing that exists in SUV across the globe for Canadian Startup Visa. Okay, prices are all over the place. If you were in a market where traditionally you were paying 45, 50,000 for Startup Visa to your consultants, it won't exist anymore. You may be pushed out completely unless you have a much bigger price. And I know a lot of people will be upset when I say this, but this is it. I've always said the Startup Visa is a pay-to-play program, okay? Unless you've got an amazing unicorn startup, which I know Most people don't. I don't either. So either you've got the budget for study visa, or you got to look at alternatives programs for your PR to Canada, folks. If and this is what we do. Just concluding our session today, we're a licensed firm. Obviously, we're very active in the startup space. If anyone's looking for alternative programs or assistance with SUV, reach out to us. We've got a licensed firm, and obviously we'll tell you upfront, you have a chance, you don't have a chance, what are your costs and expenses. Right now, most people have no idea what's going on in the SUV world. Every incubator, desert organization is saying, wait for 2, 3, 4 weeks, because everyone's waiting to see what the other is doing, because they have no clue what they should be doing, right? So there's a lot of regrouping by the desert organization, trying to figure out what they should be doing, how much they should be charging, how they should be changing their policies. I know what we're doing, and we're already recommending this to a lot of desert organizations we're working with. Folks, we'll see you potentially the week after, because I have some events coming up where I have to participate and present, and I'm a speaker. But then a week after, we should be back the Thursday after. Sahel Malek says, Saraviza, latest timeline for PR after the changes. Well, I think prioritized applications could be done in 1 year. Prioritized startup visa applications for PR could be processed in 1 year. That could be the new standard. And then the non-prioritized ones could take 2 to 2.5 years. Okay, folks, thanks again. We'll see you in about 2 Thursdays. But subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to be notified of when we come online, because it's just random. We just come in at any time of the day or the week. Thanks, folks. Take care. And if you think I'm crazy, well, I do too. See you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us, by the way.